What happens when you've got a rookie quarterback who's outplaying veterans in film sessions, but still isn't getting the nod? Behind closed doors, coaches are watching tape that tells a completely different story from anything being said in press conferences. Practice after practice, internal charts show him making faster reads, commanding the huddle with confidence, and outscoring the competition in nearly every metric that actually matters. Some even say the coaching staff has stopped debating if he should start, and are now asking how soon they can build the entire offense around him. But here's where it gets strange. Despite all the signs of a breakout talent emerging behind the scenes, outside the building, he's barely mentioned. The headlines keep focusing on flashier draft picks, while the quarterback quietly gaining support inside NFL rooms is left out of the conversation. It's not just a football decision anymore. It's about politics, franchise direction, and a growing internal fear of developmental failure. And at the center of it all, Shadūr Sanders, the son of a legend. The rookie who isn't asking for the spotlight, he's just earning it, one rep at a time. So why hasn't the organization fully handed him the keys yet? Sources inside the Browns are finally starting to talk, and what they're saying changes everything. You wouldn't know it from the headlines, but inside the Browns facility, one name keeps coming up in the quarterback room, and not in a quiet way. Coaches talk about prep habits. Teammates talk about leadership. Analysts, they're mostly silent. But the people closest to the grind are starting to say that Shadūr Sanders might be the biggest untold story in the league right now. This isn't a kid who's just riding his father's legacy or waiting on a handout. From the moment he came into the building, insiders say Shedeur walked in like a pro, not a prospect. Early mornings, last out of the facility, calling out protections like a vet. It wasn't long before people started noticing this wasn't your average rookie quarterback. Several staffers reportedly said the first time Shedeur sat in on a protection install, he didn't just keep up, he led the room. When most rookies would still be trying to digest the terminology, he was shifting blocking assignments and diagnosing blitzes like he'd seen it all before. There wasn't hesitation, just control. And in this league, control from under center is everything. That's what separates a thrower from a quarterback. But here's where things get interesting. As his internal grades kept ticking upward, so did the questions. According to sources, Sanders wasn't just showing poise. He was outperforming expectations at a pace that had some staffers legitimately stunned. He was reportedly checking out of bad looks before the ball was snapped, killing plays mid-progression that would have led to sacks, and finding quick windows other QBs in the room either didn't see or held the ball too long to hit. That's not talent you can teach, that's feel. And feel is gold in the NFL. One high-level team source even compared his pre-snap awareness to that of a second- or third-year starter, saying, "It's not just that he knows the reads, he knows why he knows them." It's a small detail that makes a massive difference. Plenty of young quarterbacks memorize the playbook. Fewer actually understand what they're looking at in real time on Sundays. Part of the reason, insiders believe, is less about genetics and more about background. Shedeur didn't have the typical cookie-cutter football path. Coming up under his father, Deion Sanders, at Jackson State, and then Colorado, he not only had to thrive under pressure, he had to do it while the cameras were rolling at every step. Say what you want about media hype, but it shaped a guy who doesn't blink when the moment gets loud. Insiders say his time at Colorado forced him to process the game like a coach. At times, he reportedly ran no-huddle offenses with close to full autonomy, calling checks, audibles, and evaluating fronts all on the fly. That experience is already translating in the league. Several coaches reportedly noted how quickly he adjusts to disguise defensive looks, not panic, not freeze, just pure recalibration. Resetting protections, identifying the hot reads, controlling tempo. That's not college flash. That's NFL functionality. And when it comes to the locker room, players notice leadership. You can't fake it. According to multiple reports, teammates began staying later during installs when Shedeur was taking the reps. Offensive linemen communicated more fluidly. Receivers adjusted depth on the fly. Running backs picked up on his cadence mid-snap. These are things that never show up in the box score, but they win games. Coaches watch for that. Still, with all that momentum internally, Sanders wasn't automatically elevated to primary reps. According to sources, that's where the divide started showing. One person close to the team even muttered, he was doing everything right and still had to wait. And that wait, it wasn't helping anyone. Practice charts reportedly showed the pattern. Every time Shedeur got extended time with the starters, his efficiency increased across the board. Higher completion rate, fewer negative plays, smoother red zone execution. And the moment things started clicking, the reps got cut back again. Multiple insiders described it as a stop-start process that hurt rhythm, chemistry, and trust, not just for Sanders, but for the entire offense around him. But nobody inside the building ever questioned the work ethic. Coaches said he was obsessed with film, and according to sources, he built custom study guides just to master blitz recognition during his first few weeks. Not get-by material, deep stuff. He reportedly spent his rookie offseason studying how NFL safeties rotate at the snap, just to shave milliseconds off his reads. That's the kind of prep most rookies don't touch until year 2 or 3. And yet, the public narrative mostly stayed quiet. While draft darlings and media hyped picks grabbed the headlines, Shedeur flew under the radar. It wasn't that he wasn't good enough to drive discussion. It's that most people didn't realize how fast things were changing behind the scenes. Even reporters who cover the Browns daily barely mentioned it. But internally, people were talking. And one coach, someone who's worked with quarterbacks for decades, reportedly said, "We've had guys come and go through this room. He's not just special, he learns different." The craziest part? He wasn't even getting the full install yet. Shedeur was operating within a basic install package, not with specific plays tailored to what he does best. No accelerated tempo. No RPO extensions. No deep leverage seam routes. Nothing dialed up specifically for his rhythm. And even then, the results were turning coaches' heads, which raised an uncomfortable question inside the Browns facility, and it wouldn't stay quiet for long. If everyone who watches the film sees he's ready, why isn't the opportunity keeping pace? It's easy to argue over potential. Scouts do it every year, but in the league, the film doesn't lie. And according to people inside the Browns facility, the moment Shedeur's practice tapes started circulating through internal meetings, the conversation shifted fast. Not into hype, not into hope, into proof. Quarterbacks don't get judged on highlight reels inside league buildings. They're judged on the stuff fans never see, how they react to pressure off the edge, where their eyes go post-snap, how quickly they reset when a play breaks down. That's the tape that gets slowed down, frame by frame, while jobs are on the line. And according to multiple sources, when quarterback coach Bill Musgrave started walking the staff through Shedeur's tape, the noise stopped. The debates dried up. People started leaning in. One play reportedly sealed it. Mid-practice, simulated pressure, disguised cover 3 shell, delayed blitz from the boundary. A defense designed to bait young quarterbacks into mistakes. The staff was expecting either a hesitation or a forced throw. But Shedeur didn't bite. Reset his feet, redirected the protection, held the safety with his eyes, and ripped an intermediate dig before the break. Ball placement? Perfect. Anticipation? Textbook. That single throw reportedly made the room go silent for a beat. But it wasn't just one flash. Sources say Musgrave kept rolling clips, showing Shedeur improvising under fire, throwing receivers open rather than waiting for separation, and adapting his reads based on real-time leverage, something most rookies don't fully pick up until year 2 or 3. There were breakdowns of how he identified middle field rotations before the snap and adjusted routes mid-cadence. According to people in the room, this wasn't a coaching moment, it was exposure. The type of reel that forces everyone watching to reconsider what they thought they knew. And just as important, the tape showed contrast, direct comparisons, reps where other quarterbacks in the room hesitated or missed windows that Shedeur attacked without fear. Coaches reportedly watched side-by-side throws from the same script, same play, same coverage. Shedeur's version came out faster, cleaner, and more decisive. Those kinds of comparisons aren't just eye candy, they're data points, and they stick. Musgrave, according to insiders, didn't package any of this emotionally. No campaign speech. No give the kid a shot moment, just tape. Surgical, clinical, let the film speak. And it did. But what surprised the room even more was what that film revealed about consistency. Not just big plays, but repeatable decisions. Against zero pressure looks, sources say Shedeur's delivery time shortened, his release quickened, and his decision-making didn't drop off as reads went deeper into the progression. That's the real separator. Anyone can throw hot off the first read. Very few can reprocess a defense after the root concept breaks down. Another detail reportedly shocked staffers, how composed Shedeur looked against simulated disguise coverages. Veteran defensive backs trying rookies is nothing new. Show a too high shell, rotate late, bait the throw. Rookies almost always fire into the trap. Insiders say Shedeur didn't just avoid those traps, he anticipated them. Coaches reportedly had to rewind certain plays just to make sure what they saw was actually what happened. And more often than not, they realized it wasn't just instinct, it was mastery. That's when Musgrave, according to sources, started circling the real issue: opportunity, not talent, not personality, not leadership. Reps because as the tape rolled on, a pattern became undeniable. The more first-team snaps Shedeur got, the more his production escalated. Not gradually, rapidly. Internal efficiency charts reportedly showed spikes in red zone conversion, third down anticipation, and even throw velocity data during extended reps. One source flat out said, "He doesn't warm up to the speed, he starts at it." But for some reason, the reps kept cycling down. Despite the data and the tape saying, "He's ready for more," the opportunity chart didn't match. Sources said Musgrave made it clear. Inconsistency in reps wasn't a result of performance, it was a cause of hesitation. Reps don't just build chemistry, they build proof. And without consistent reps, the proof never leaves the room. One insider put it like this: "You start to wonder what's being protected. Either someone's afraid of what happens if you give him control, or someone's afraid of what happens if you don't." And that brings us to the moment when things truly bit. Because Musgrave didn't stop at tape. According to sources, he pulled out practice performance charts behind closed doors, tracking metrics most fans don't even know get measured. Time to throw, decision interval, sack probability reduction, percentage of tight window throws completed. Shedeur wasn't just holding his own, he was leading the room. And still, he wasn't elevated. That, insiders claim, is when the room changed. Watching athletes shine on film is normal. What made this moment different was realizing that film had not yet translated into opportunity. Musgrave, reportedly without raising his voice, made his point. This wasn't about opinions. It was about production. It's hard to argue with a film session that looks exactly like what you've been hoping to see from a young QB for years. From that point on, the vibe in the quarterback room shifted. According to people close to the situation, competition ramped up, but for the first time in months, it felt real, earned, not rotated. Depth chart talks got louder. Meeting rooms got sharper. Players reportedly walked out asking the same question coaches had just finished whispering. How long can you keep a quarterback that's clearly performing like this on a leash? And if the answer isn't clear soon, the next round of questions won't stop at the field. They'll head straight upstairs. The eye test is one thing, but in today's NFL, the numbers are louder. And behind the scenes, those numbers weren't just backing up what the film showed on Shadūr Sanders, they were turning quiet support into undeniable momentum. Coaches might lead with tape, but execs trust data. Practice reps are tracked, tagged, broken down into percentages. Every throw, decision window, foot movement, escape route, red zone red, it's all charted. And according to multiple insiders with direct access to internal reports, those charts told a very specific story. The rookie was outperforming the depth chart in nearly every critical area. Completion percentage during full speed installs, highest in the room. Red zone decision making under pressure, efficient, conservative when needed, but aggressive in the right moments. Sack avoidance, off the charts, especially when protections broke down. His time to throw metric, something coaches obsess over in tempo-driven systems, was reportedly faster than two of the quarterback room's veterans. And it wasn't just quick, it was calculated. No hitch panic, no scramble first instincts, just movement within structure. Sources say his interception rate during mock blitz sessions was virtually non-existent. And in 11 on 11 reps where practice speed mimicked game pressure, staff reportedly started seeing things they hadn't seen in that room for a while. Anticipation throws, second window completions, and heat checks that somehow hit. Internal terminology was changing. Notes started saying things like sees it early and feels pocket instead of rookie tendency or needs cleanup. That kind of shift doesn't happen unless trust is being built, and built fast. And the stat that reportedly hit hardest? Decision speed increase during extended starter reps. On weeks where Shedeur saw more consistent work with the first team, his ball out time dropped by almost 12%. Not because he got reckless, but because his rhythm got sharper. Completion percentage jumped 5 points. Drives lasted longer. Third down efficiency increased. Those numbers weren't leaked to the media. They were passed around in internal quarterback meetings, team install rooms, and analytics reviews like a quiet alarm bell. Insiders say the advanced analytics team, the people who care far more about trends than titles, started backing the idea that opportunity wasn't matching output. One analyst reportedly expressed concern that misalignment between data and playing time was becoming a pattern of stagnation. That's not coach speak. That's warning language. And when performance indicators climb but reps don't, that draws eyes, big ones. By midseason, according to sources familiar with Brown's team operations, internal documents referred to Shadeur's growth curve as accelerated versus control. Meaning, when compared to other quarterbacks on the roster under the same conditions, he was developing faster. And in an industry where faster means everything, contracts, depth, and entire careers hang on those curves, that forced people upstairs to pay attention. Ironically, it wasn't explosive highlights in live games that moved the internal needle. It was reliable metrics in closed practices. A front office staffer reportedly said he wasn't making YouTube throws, he was making playoff throws, the kind coaches trust in January. That's a huge difference. Sometimes it's not about what you can do once. It's about what you can do 10 times in a row, under stress, with no margin for error. That's what separates a trending quarterback from one who's ready to lead. And there came a point, sources say, where coaches stopped asking what he could do and started asking what would happen if they gave him full control. But the numbers didn't just speak to his throws. They exposed what insiders are calling a developmental logjam. Reps were rotating in a way that didn't match momentum. Shedeur would light up in stall periods, then get fewer red zone looks the next day. He'd dominate tempo drills, then find himself watching reps go to quarterbacks with lower practice grades. Internally, that didn't make sense. And reportedly, it started frustrating more than just coaches. Veteran players began asking quiet questions, not in protest, but in process. Are these reps earned or assigned? One receiver who took increased snaps with Shedeur during practice reportedly told a coach, "That kid sees things before I cut. I've only felt that one other time in this league." It wasn't meant to take down anyone else in the room. It was meant to spotlight rising chemistry that hadn't even been fully tested yet. And when chemistry shows up early, it raises another question. Why not build around it? Several insiders claim that by the time the numbers started circulating across departments, from QB coaches to player personnel, even those hesitant to change their evaluations started shifting. One former scout reportedly said, "His numbers are what you look for in a second-year guy, but he's still waiting on first-year reps." And buried within that sentence is the core issue. Performance had outpaced process, but the process hadn't caught up. It's also where front offices can get exposed. Because when a rookie quarterback displays advanced pocket feel, consistent accuracy, protection command, and rising efficiency, and still isn't trending up the chart, the disconnect starts looking less like caution and more like politics. That's when locker rooms notice. That's when ownership starts asking about alignment. And that's when jobs can quietly come into question. Sources say Musgrave didn't have to present hyped-up projections. He just laid down performance graphs next to rep sheets. One didn't match the other. And that's exactly when executives started paying closer attention. Because in today's NFL, you can explain a loss, but you can't always explain away the numbers. And in the case of Shadūr Sanders, the deeper the front office dug into his data, the less they could justify waiting. If the film showed promise and the numbers confirmed it, then why was the opportunity still inconsistent? That was the question people inside the Browns building had been dancing around for months. But eventually, they stopped whispering and started wondering out loud whether the real issue wasn't performance at all. It was management. More specifically, developmental mismanagement. The kind that coaches usually avoid talking about publicly, but players feel instantly when it happens. Several insiders say the inconsistencies with Shadūr Sanders' reps weren't subtle. One week he'd get solid chunks of work with the first team, communication would sync, reads would tighten, and chemistry with the receivers would clearly improve. Then out of nowhere, he'd be rotated back down. Snap counts adjusted. Red zone looks reduced. Momentum reset, it became a pattern, and not the good kind. Veteran linemen reportedly started noticing it first. The way protections felt smoother when he was under center. The timing of his cadence. The way he adjusted to pre-snap motion on the fly. Things that quarterbacks usually need seasons to build with their teammates. He was doing that in reps counted by practice script, not by game time. It wasn't supposed to be possible. And yet, every time things started clicking, his work with the starters got dialed back again. One offensive assistant reportedly asked behind closed doors, "What are we doing here? Developing him or protecting a pecking order?" That question landed harder than expected. Sources say it began surfacing during review meetings, not just among coaches, but among performance staff and support personnel. The growing sense was that the organization was caught between two competing timelines, the one that wanted to test the rookie and the one that didn't want to move too fast. But here's the problem. Development doesn't wait around for everyone to feel comfortable. Quarterbacks don't evolve on a committee schedule. If you don't give a young QB rhythm reps, if you don't let them fail, adjust, and re-attack within the same install, it's not just inefficient, it's wasted time. And this wasn't about playbook familiarity anymore. According to those who had seen the current installs, Shedeur already understood the skeletal structure of the offense. In fact, several sources claimed he grasped the protection packages and root concepts quicker than multiple veterans in the room, especially when the looks got exotic. So now you had a quarterback who was absorbing the mental side and producing on tape, but still wasn't being progressed like someone who could one day run the show. Nobody called it sabotage, but they didn't call it fair either. Multiple players reportedly voiced concern about rhythm or the lack of it, because rhythm isn't just about a quarterback finding his groove. It's about building trust across an entire unit. Receivers need timing. Linemen need consistency in cadence. Backs need to know how quick a QB pulls on play action. And none of that develops if the person running the offense changes day to day. Inconsistency feeds uncertainty. And uncertainty spreads through a locker room faster than any stat line. That's when insiders say Musgrave used the phrase that rippled across the facility. If you ask him to lead, you have to let him lead. It wasn't framed as defiance. It was reality. You can't expect a quarterback to evolve if you treat him like a placeholder. And in that moment, coaches started using a different lens. They weren't just watching for mistakes anymore. They were watching for the system's mistakes, too. One internal review reportedly highlighted how many of Shedeur's actual practice errors, late throws, off-rhythm timing, occasional footwork breakdowns, occurred when he was working with backups or receiving mixed script installs. Translation: the system was undercutting his chemistry before he could build it, not because he wasn't good enough, but because he wasn't set up to gain reps and confidence in parallel. It doesn't sound like much, but inside an NFL organization, that detail can derail years of investment. Another layer, sources say, involved communication protocol. Early in the season, install meetings were reportedly more general, script-focused, and evenly distributed. But as the season progressed and game plans got tighter, preferred quarterback reps reflected coaching preferences, not necessarily performance. That's common in the NFL. But in this case, it was reportedly in conflict with practice grades. And when personnel decisions ignore the data, culture starts unraveling. One veteran receiver reportedly put it simply, "When guys doing it right don't move up, eventually you stop trusting the process." Developing a franchise QB isn't just about drafting talent. It's about timing, opportunity, and clarity. And for too long, clarity was missing. According to sources close to the team, even minor details, like who was leading walkthroughs, who was mic'd up during huddle checks, or who was scripting 2-minute drills, became points of friction. Reps, at that point, weren't just reps. They were indicators of trust. That's why, according to several people in the building, Musgrave finally called out the underlying issue. Not the quarterback, the process around him. His stance wasn't emotional, it was systematic. Trust isn't something a QB earns one time. It has to be reinforced through action. Because in a league this fast, hesitation doesn't just waste snaps. It kills development curves. The phrase quarterback mismanagement reportedly started showing up not as an accusation, but as a warning. The league is full of guys who could have been something if only the reps had come sooner. If only the guidance was more consistent. If only the belief in them extended beyond YouTube highlights and press conference quotes. And that's what was at risk. Sources say multiple departments began reviewing how quarterback development was being tracked and measured, not just in terms of performance, but in actual opportunity alignment. Because if you have an ascending player and you stifle him by accident, you don't just miss a season, you miss a window. Up to that point, most of the conversations around Shedeur were quiet, subtle, hinted at in film rooms, whispered during installs, buried under layers of diplomacy. But then Bill Musgrave spoke and everything changed. It wasn't the way he said it. It was when he said it and how much he backed it up. Musgrave had been around the game too long to posture. 30-plus years in the league, from coaching legends to working through rebuilds, he knows when a quarterback is developing and when one is being wasted. And according to multiple sources inside the building, he reached his limit. In one closed-door film session alongside staff and analysts, Musgrave reportedly laid everything out. Not just practice clips or stat sheets, but a full-scope view of how Shedeur was processing coverages, commanding protections, and making throws that weren't just good for a rookie, but good period. There's a difference between potential and production, and Musgrave made it crystal clear. This was no longer about future upside. It was about what was already happening right now, on film, on the field, and in the locker room. One source close to the room said he didn't raise his voice once. No frustration, just calm certainty that came from watching the tape one too many times and no longer seeing a question. Just an answer. And that answer? Shadūr Sanders was ready for more. What shocked people wasn't just the praise, it was the fact that Musgrave reportedly called out the real reason the situation hadn't moved forward: mishandled process. According to insiders, he acknowledged the reps issue outright and laid bare the impact it was having on rhythm, chemistry, and overall quarterback development. There was no passive voice, no dodging, just football truth. If a quarterback doesn't get true starter rhythm, you're not evaluating him anymore. You're just stalling. One coach reportedly described the moment as surgical. Not emotional, not political, just undeniable. For weeks, opinions had clashed about timelines, comfort levels, and coaching preferences. But all it took was Musgrave running the film and placing his thumb directly on 2 or 3 sequences, the kind seasoned coaches can sniff out in real time, to shift the entire tone of the conversation. He reportedly highlighted one drive in particular, where Shedeur calmly adjusted 3 times pre-snap manipulated coverage with his eyes, fired into a second window slant between double coverage, then finished the possession with a sidearm rope-off platform across his body in the red zone. Musgrave didn't call it flashy. He called it NFL quarterbacking, under real pressure, with real control. That distinction was everything. At that moment, according to the people in the room, the debate didn't just slow down, it evaporated. Someone had finally verbalized what others had been sensing but were too cautious to say. Maybe what the franchise had been looking for was already in the building, and maybe they were about to let it slip through the cracks. Musgrave also addressed the intangibles critics bring up whenever a young QB plays well: leadership, voice, maturity, teammate respect. He reportedly knocked those down one by one with examples: receivers staying after meetings to catch more balls with Shedeur, linemen requesting to go through tempo sets with him after walkthroughs, installs running smoother when he took lead. Not coincidence, not hype, not vibes, just football professionals responding to someone they trust behind center. But Musgrave wasn't naive. He reportedly made it very clear that Shedeur wasn't perfect. There were still lapses, occasional footwork breakdowns, mistimed hitches, instinctive throws into coverage. But the key phrase he kept coming back to, according to multiple sources: fixable mistakes, not foundational ones. That line stuck. Coaches know you can work with fixable. You can't coach heart and you can't coach processing speed. Shedeur had both, and if you've got that, you've got something rare. By the time that meeting wrapped, something had shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't go public. But internally, a line had been crossed. Coaches who had once been lukewarm were now plotting what it would look like to build the offense differently. Reps started being distributed more intentionally. Meeting rooms changed structure. Rotations started reflecting actual performance, not projected readiness. Musgrave's approach had cut through the noise by sticking to what matters in this league: the tape, the trust, and the trajectory. And the quarterback room felt it. Players started talking differently. One defensive coach even noted that the energy across the install period leveled up. It felt like a real competition again. Guys were locked in. Suddenly reps weren't being handed out, they were being earned. Shedeur's response? He kept showing up first, left last. But more than that, he got louder in walkthroughs. Not arrogant, just present, confident, calling out shifts earlier, adjusting more proactively, encouraging mid-play swaps. Observers say his presence just took a step forward. When your quarterback grows louder in the right way, everyone hears it, and everyone listens. Veteran coaches understand something most fans don't. Development isn't just about talent emerging. It's about friction disappearing. When a locker room no longer questions who should have the job, it means something. And for the first time since he walked in the building, teammates weren't asking if Shedeur belonged. They were asking why it took this long for someone to say it out loud. Musgrave finally did. And in a league built on quiet loyalties and fear of being wrong, that level of clarity made the rest of the building take a breath. Because when the guy who's been in every kind of quarterback room says the rookie isn't just ready, but held back, the truth gets heavy. And decision makers either move toward it or get moved out of the way. Once Musgrave laid everything bare, the effects didn't stop at the quarterback room. The truth moved upstairs. For weeks, executives could comfortably treat the quarterback depth chart as a coaching matter. That's how the NFL works. Unless numbers trend, the brass lets the football people handle football. But once Musgrave's internal presentation made its way through staff channels and into the analytic reports folder marked "Quarterback Efficiency Review Required," the conversation changed tone. And quickly. According to multiple sources familiar with the Browns' internal reviews, performance analysts began cross-checking their own datasets against quarterback rep distribution. What they found mirrored Musgrave's argument almost line for line. When Shadūr Sanders received 40% or more of first-team reps, the offensive efficiency metrics jumped. Higher completion rate, fewer stalled drives, lower negative play ratio. When his rep share dropped, so did the offense's cohesion. There was now empirical evidence that development mismanagement wasn't just a coaching gripe. It was costing productivity, and nothing gets executive attention faster than efficiency metrics pointing in the wrong direction. At first, the reaction was procedural. Meetings, memos, quiet alignment conversations. But then another department started kicking up data, marketing analytics. They'd noticed that whenever Shadeur's name appeared in media clips, fan engagement jumped. Practice day vlogs with his highlights doubled comments. Ticket queries spiked modestly. Social impressions carried longer tail engagement. None of that was supposed to matter in a football context, but in modern NFL economics, it always does. Insiders say a few senior voices began asking uncomfortable questions that had little to do with playbooks and everything to do with optics. If the kid looks good, if fans respond, and the data backs it up. Why is our narrative behind our reality? That question never sounds threatening when first asked, but everyone in the building knows it's code for. If this turns bad, we can't say we didn't know. Analytics staff reportedly compiled comparative charts for a closed-door meeting: rep share versus efficiency, turnover-worthy throw rate, drive time, and red zone scoring probability. The graphs were blunt. There were no dramatic deltas, just steady, unmistakable improvement that coincided only with one variable: reps. You could almost draw the line diagonally across the page: more reps, better results. Less reps, stagnation. For a data-driven front office, that's the kind of cause and effect chain you can't unsee. Around that same time, another irritant surfaced: external perception. Beat reporters kept characterizing Shedeur as a developmental prospect, parroting the limited snaps they saw on public film. Internally, though, coaches were using words like command, anticipation, and control. That split between external narrative and internal grade sheets put PR in an awkward position. Ownership hates awkward positions. One insider phrased it cleanly: when your headlines and your film room disagree, someone's losing control of the message. Suddenly, the problem wasn't whether Sanders could play. It was whether the franchise looked coherent. And coherence, in the NFL, is currency. By midweek, executives from football operations and analytics reportedly joined a closed review session where player development data was presented in stacked columns. All quarterbacks, all metrics, anonymized. The room didn't need names to guess which column belonged to whom. The best performing column had the lowest rep total. That visual by itself said more than an argument ever could. Someone apparently muttered, "That's upside being wasted right there." After that, priorities quietly shifted. Discussion turned toward alignment between evaluation and opportunity, corporate phrasing for "we may have to fix this before it embarrasses us." Insiders describe it almost like gears clicking, subtle but irreversible. Scouting departments were asked to update projections for 2025, assuming an increased Shedeur workload. The word accelerated integration began showing up in internal briefs. Assistant coaches were told to design off-season drills around quicker tempo, expanded RPO reads, and intermediate timing routes, concepts that fit his style. Changes that once felt hypothetical became line items on planning documents. It's never dramatic when that shift happens. No one slams desks or makes speeches. It's quieter, more deliberate. You start seeing staff schedules adjusted. You see requests for more player pairing data, receivers matched with quarterbacks during live drills. You see leadership consultants being placed in communication drills. Small details that mean the organization is preparing to stop talking about development and start operationalizing it. Still, with every analytical confirmation came political tension. According to one source, a few established coaches worried that giving the rookie too much too soon could fracture the locker room. But analytics and Musgrave's film sessions kept undermining that fear. Every performance metric suggested the opposite. When Shedeur led periods, the offense communicated more cleanly and drive tempo improved. Rumors even circulated that veteran players had started requesting to be in his practice group because it felt sharper. That's the sort of grassroots validation no spreadsheet can simulate. And high above all the data and film debates sat ownership, getting regular briefings on both football development and brand traction. Nothing official ever leaked, but one person familiar with the reports said the effect was predictable. Optimism mixed with urgency. Because if the numbers showed the rookie was already trending above projections, waiting too long could mean losing the narrative of discovery, the sense that the organization found him on its own timeline. In a results-driven league, you rarely want to look like you're catching up to your own player. So the quiet directive filtered down: build alignment, reduce hesitation, plan the transition. Inside the building, you could feel the shift, papers sliding across desks, tone of conversations softening, fewer conditional phrases like "if he develops," replaced with "when we expand." Not official announcements, just linguistic evolution. Those subtle shifts always precede public change. By the time the next internal evaluation cycle rolled around, word was that reps would no longer rotate out of rhythm but scale progressively. More first-team sessions. More tempo segments designed around his timing. Even play design tweaks began appearing in practice scripts, favoring quick reads and vertical leverage, Shadeur's wheelhouse. The process that once looked stuck in neutral was now quietly accelerating. And everyone could trace the ignition point back to the same place: a veteran coach who spoke plainly enough that the data had no choice but to agree. As soon as word about those internal shifts started to leak, not as headlines, but as small changes people felt in the building, the energy turned different. Football ops could feel it. The locker room could feel it. Even marketing staff working 3 floors up could feel it. Something about the team's rhythm just started clicking again, and most signs pointed back to one person. The first pulse came from the players. Offense meetings that used to feel like white noise tape review suddenly had edge. Guys leaned forward instead of scrolling through install sheets. Receivers were staying after walkthroughs again, not because anyone told them to, but because they wanted to run extra routes with the same quarterback who was now getting most of the tempo reps. A veteran guard reportedly joked, "You can tell when he's taking snaps, the room stops yawning." That shift isn't just excitement, it's belief. And belief is infectious. In a sport built on precision and routine, belief distorts time. Practices move faster, corrections hit harder, laughs come easier. You can't fake that. Internally, coaches admitted the locker room's mood index, the unofficial metric every staff silently tracks, was trending upward. When your offensive line starts joking again after practice, when receivers actively debate which option route fits his timing best, you've got something cooking. Meanwhile, upstairs, the numbers started echoing the vibe. Merchandise sales for jerseys connected to Shadeur's number climbed modestly but steadily. Clips of him during team media sessions drew disproportionate engagement across social platforms. Even neutral football accounts began reposting snippets from internal team media days, small glimpses of the rookie running a drill, laughing with veterans, or dropping a spiral in slow motion. It wasn't a PR campaign. It was organic curiosity building traction. And in today's NFL, curiosity is currency. Once fans start asking questions, corporate partnerships start paying attention. One marketing manager reportedly described the situation as momentum on autopilot. No press releases, no media push, just genuine buzz forming around a quarterback who still technically hadn't been labeled the starter. That same manager joked that the analytics page for social engagement had become a quasi-depth chart. Every time Shedeur appeared in official content, the performance spiked, like the internet was trying to will the franchise into naming him QB1. Inside the front office, this uptick didn't go unnoticed. The people who signed sponsorship contracts knew the difference between hype that burns fast and belief that sticks. This was the latter. Executives now faced the rare alignment of performance data, locker room heartbeat, and market energy all pointing in the same direction. That kind of convergence is how entire organizations pivot. But for the players, none of that corporate noise mattered. For them, the change was simple. The ball was moving better. Instead of dead drives built on hurry-up confusion, practice sessions had flow. The offense wasn't guessing at rhythm anymore, it was breathing. And when an offense breathes, defenses start feeling it too. A defensive back reportedly said, "You can tell when the guy under center actually means it. He looks you off with purpose, not panic." That comment spread faster than some game highlights. Respect from the other side of the ball is the truest metric there is. Rumor around practice media access was that Shedeur had started taking control of huddle chatter without being told. He didn't overtalk it, just owned it. That confidence shifted how teammates interacted with him. You could hear it in the difference between how receivers responded to his corrections versus anyone else's. "My bad, I'll fix it," instead of, "We'll see on film." Small phrase, giant meaning. By that point, coaches weren't policing leadership differential anymore. They were letting it happen. Musgrave's quiet declaration months prior had done its job. The veteran calm that runs through long-tenured quarterbacks, someone who's processed enough chaos to appear tranquil, was emerging. The staff started building around it, maybe subconsciously at first. Play calls trimmed unnecessary complexity. Motion reduced to simplify reads. Install scripts began describing certain sessions as Shedeur timing. It's subtle, but in coaching language, that's the first sign of system adaptation. And with internal buy-in solidifying, executives accelerated their plans. Future scheduling notes referenced off-season promotional work tied loosely to the young quarterback's image, not as marketing fluff, but as a confidence statement. The kind that says, "He's not next, he's now." Still, some voices inside the organization reportedly warned about overexposure, letting momentum build too publicly before the team's structure was fully ready. But those warnings were swept aside by the sheer consistency of the internal data. When every measurable, practice success rate, locker room energy, consumer interest, moves in the same direction, it becomes harder to cling to caution. And for the first time in years, the Browns looked like a franchise with an authentic story forming in real time. Not manufactured hope, not nostalgia, just growth catching up to recognition. The locker room kept feeding off it. Veteran players who had seen dozens of next big thing, rookies come and go, began treating Shedeur less like a kid and more like a colleague. A few offensive leaders reportedly started asking him to run 7-on-7 walkthroughs even on days when he wasn't scheduled to, just to keep rhythm. By the third week of winter installs, he was reportedly leading those sessions outright. Coaching oversight became light touch. Observe, don't interrupt. The defense noticed, too. Trash talk shifted from dismissive to competitive respect. Short, sharp jabs followed by handshakes and laughs. The line between evaluation and expectation blurred. Upstairs, comms directors drafted notes on how to manage media curiosity without confirming internal changes. But they knew the truth was already out. You can't hide good football for long. And maybe that was the most fascinating angle. The same organization that once tiptoed around giving this quarterback too much attention was now strategizing how to stay ahead of the attention wave created by its own locker room. The machine had flipped. Insiders described that period as the calm before commitment. Everyone assumed an official pivot was coming. They just didn't know when. But quietly, the consensus formed. If this trajectory holds, 2025 wouldn't just be a transition year, it would be a declaration. The convergence of film, data, faith, and marketing energy had created something bigger than a positional battle. It was a reputational moment for the franchise itself. And according to those closest to it, the Browns understood exactly what was on the line. Not just a quarterback's emergence, but proof that the organization could finally develop one right. All those small choices, one coach speaking plainly, one analyst charting performance honestly, one front office conversation that refused to hide behind comfort, had built toward something bigger. By the time the off-season calendar flipped, you could feel an odd mixture of focus and adrenaline inside the building. No slogans, no hype videos, just quiet agreement that 2025 wasn't another developmental year. It was judgment year, You could see it in planning sessions. The whiteboards that used to sketch if-then scenarios, if he grows, if he adjusts, if he earns it, were gone. In their place were action blocks, tempo series built around faster cadence, protection schemes redesigned to emphasize quick reads, RPO drills integrated fully into core install instead of being treated as experiments. It didn't matter what you called it, the offense was now being shaped in the rookie's image. Insiders said the key word floating through spring planning was freedom. Musgrave believed that was the lever separating a competent quarterback from a dangerous one. Let him see it, call it, and let it rip. Keep the rhythm tight, let instinct breathe. The most interesting part? Other coaches bought in fast. Maybe it was the film, maybe it was fatigue from hesitation. But everyone seemed to realize that if you're going to turn control over to a young passer, you either do it fully or don't do it at all. Half measures destroy quarterbacks. The roster strategy reflected that philosophy. Front office scouts began highlighting wideouts who separate late in routes, guys whose timing suits an anticipatory thrower. Offensive line scouting shifted toward communicators, linemen who thrive in on-the-fly call adjustments. You could read the intent between each transaction. The team wasn't just building for him, it was building around him. And somewhere along that process, fear turned into challenge. Coaches weren't whispering about risk anymore. They were asking each other how far they could push it. That's how you know belief has matured, when you start designing harder tests, not excuses. Training camp projections reportedly scheduled record load for first team sessions, double the rhythm reps compared to the year before. Staff called it overcorrection, but in football terms, overcorrection just means you finally stopped playing scared. Executives who once tiptoed around player development questions now spoke openly about expecting frontline command. The phrasing might sound corporate, but it meant trust. For a rookie-turned-leader, that's the currency that matters most. Behind closed doors, there was still realism. No one believed flipping control would guarantee immediate wins. Growth comes with bruises. But this time, the difference was ownership of those bruises. If mistakes came, they'd be his to make. If success came, it wouldn't be dismissed as luck or timing, it would be the result of trust finally meeting preparation. Sources close to the analytics side described a word appearing on more internal summaries: trajectory. That word replaced potential. Potential implies waiting. Trajectory implies movement. The curve was pointing upward, and everyone could see it. Around that same time, defensive coordinators across the league reportedly started shifting how they scouted the Browns. You know respect has arrived when opponents are planning for you differently. One rival coach, quoted anonymously by a scouting consultant, said, "He's not reading from the script anymore, he's writing it." That's how early respect takes shape, quietly through preparation changes. Ownership saw traction in another area: fan base behavior. Jersey orders stabilizing at positive growth quarter over quarter, content engagement coming from outside the team's regional base, small corporate sponsorships attaching their names to training camp live streams. These might look like side notes, but they matter in this century's NFL economics. Every sign suggested readiness, not just from a quarterback or a team, but from an ecosystem ready to believe again. Internally, one mentor reportedly told Shedeur during a late-night review session, "This is the year belief becomes proof." People close to him said he took it literally. His off-season was quiet, nearly invisible. No PR bursts, no media tour, just study, conditioning, and internal drills focused on tightening timing windows by a few fractions of a second. Coaches who dropped by during voluntary sessions said he looked the same physically but different in presence. Steadier, clipped responses, more teaching than talking. It's the subtle evolution of a quarterback stepping from student to standard. The upcoming season carried tangible stakes, not theoretical, professional ones. If development faltered again, coaches would pay for it. The organization's credibility, rebuilt one honest meeting at a time, hinged on proving they could execute what they finally claimed to believe. And everyone, from interns to executives, understood it. That kind of pressure can fracture a franchise, but it can also forge one. In the building, you could feel the difference between tension and focus. Tension hesitates, focus sharpens. The vibe leaned toward sharp. Staff meetings shortened, film sessions lengthened. The entire place felt synchronized toward one shared thesis. There's no more protecting the process. It's time to prove it. What few outside observers realized is that alignment at this level is incredibly rare. Coaches, analysts, players, marketing, ownership, all moving toward the same outcome. Most franchises chase that unity for decades and never find it. The Browns finally had it, at least for a moment, and everyone seemed terrified of wasting it again. By the time reporters returned for preseason observation, hints had already leaked. New play calling tempo, different alignment packages, slightly altered body language around the practice field. Nothing confirmed, everything implied. That's how change announces itself in the NFL, not with fireworks, but with silence that feels loaded. When the new season launches, no one will admit outright that Musgrave's meeting months earlier tipped the dominoes. But inside the Browns building, everyone knows the timeline of truth begins there. The afternoon when a tired coach chose candor over caution, and honesty started a chain reaction. And now, the clock's ticking on the reward or the reckoning. Because in this game, alignment without results collapses quickly. Yet if the alignment holds, if preparation, trust, and rhythm finally converge on game day, then 2025 might not just define a quarterback. It might rewrite how the franchise itself is perceived. That's the real story, the moment a team risks its comfort to bet on conviction. And the rookie at the center of it, he doesn't need to chase narratives anymore. He's already living one.